Spring, 4111, Year of the Tusk, the Cnaiur Empire. Anasurimbor Kellhus, Cnaiur Skiotha, and Serwe now find themselves on the Kirane Plains. The great grasslands of the Sylvendi are behind them. Now in the heart of the Cnaiur Empire, they find themselves facing new dangers. As the trio take a brief reprieve near a river, Serwe reflects on the two strange men she has found herself with. Watching the barbarian rinse himself, she notices a pair of eyes looking back from across the river. With horror, Serwe realizes that a curious child watches the strangers. The boy is too young to understand the danger that the trio poses. The Sylvendi calmly calls out to the child in the least threatening manner he can muster. The Dunyane is ready to pounce as well, but Serwe cannot stand seeing the boy killed just to keep their presence in the Empire a secret. "Run!" she cries. The boy takes off. The two men spring after him. "Kellhus!" Serwe shouts after them. "Don't let him kill the boy." Only then realizing that the Dunyane wants the child dead, no less than the Sylvendi does. Alone for the first time in a long while, the desolate girl runs too, though she knows not where. She considers escape, recalls being violated by Cnaiur night after night, but also sees images of Kellhus, curiously smeared into the images of the Sylvendi's brutality. "Kellhus loves me," she thinks, touching her belly. The child she now bears, somehow it is Kellhus's and not the barbarian's. It must be. She soon becomes lost in the dense forest, and to her surprise 2 horsemen appear before her. 2 Kidrahill riders, the elite cavalry of the Imperial Army. There is a hunger in their eyes, a hunger Serwe has come to know all too well. They are about to assault the helpless young woman, when Cnaiur Skiotha reappears, slays one of the soldiers, then approaches to check if his prize is unharmed. As the other Kidrahill pleads to the Sylvendi, Serwe grabs a knife and takes his life. Then, Cnaiur holds Serwe pinned against a tree. Using the same knife that she wielded moments earlier, he cuts a line across her forearm, a ritual scar that the Sylvendi call Swazun. "The man you have killed is gone from the world, Serwe. He exists only here, a scar upon your arm. It is the mark of his absence, of all the ways his soul will not move, and of all the acts he will not commit, a mark of the weight you now bear." "I don't understand," she whimpers. "Is he punishing her? Why is he suddenly calling her by her name?" "You are my prize, Serwe, my tribe." Catching up with Kellhus, Cnaiur and Serwe take the dead men's horses and ride hard through the primeval forest, pressing their mounts to the point of exhaustion. Stopping briefly for the night, they count 68 torch-bearing riders in pursuit. Too many, they both agree. The chase continues for days. Serwe finds it difficult, suffering the pangs of hunger almost continuously. "How long has it been since you've been with child?" Kellhus asks at one point. Bewildered, the girl can only think, "But it's your child, Kellhus, yours." The Dunyane reads her facial expression and calmly points out that the two of them have never coupled. Feeling hurt and confused, Serwe persists in her desperate delusion, now surely convinced that Kellhus must be divine. He reads her thoughts. He knows her like no other. Surely it was he who placed a child in her womb. Who else but him? The Sylvendi insists that they continue riding hard until every last horse has perished. Finally, on foot, they slide down a ravine to buy some more time, but eventually they are cornered by armored riders. Expecting the Kidrahill, the trio is surprised to hear the soldiers announce themselves as men of the Tusk, no friends to the Cnaiur pursuers. At long last, Cnaiur, Kellhus, and their exhausted prize have reached the holy war they sought. Encamped near the city of Momum, the Holy War is growing restless, waiting for the game of politics between its leaders to be played out, eager to march south into heathen lands. Exiting the encampment of Shriel Knight Commander Sarcellus is his beautiful courtesan, followed by 2 slave girls. Esmenet, once a down-on-her-luck harlot from the slums of Sumna, is now wearing a fine linen gown. Never in her life had she been so clean, so well-fed, or so well-dressed. Aside from her eyes and her hands, she looked like the wife of some humble caste noble. Sarcellus had given her innumerable gifts: clothing, unguents, perfumes, but no jewelry. Esmenet leisurely makes her way to the city's agora, browsing the goods for sale and making eyes at a handsome Norsirai officer in the crowd. "What do you want?" she wonders. Sarcellus, her new patron, rarely left her alone since saving her on the road south of Sumna. Despite lavishing her with gifts and attention, he seems to mistrust her. Even now, his slave girls watch Esmenet. Why has she not sought out Acamian since catching up with the Holy War? She set out on her own journey to let the sorcerer know that his worst fears were coming true, that the consult, the dread antagonists of his ancient nightmares, were indeed after him. And yet, here she lingered, in the lap of luxury provided by an influential Shriel knight. With some difficulty, Esmenet sends her slave escort home and makes eye contact with the officer she'd noticed previously. Discreetly, he gestures towards an alley, and she follows. Before anything can happen, she demands to see his coin, perhaps out of habit, or perhaps whim, and the man complies, though not before haggling over the quoted price. As her anonymous lover gasps and calls out to God, first in ecstasy, then in pious repentance, Esmenet clutches the meager half-silver wages of sin. He leaves the alley without further ado, and she recalls that the other lover she had back in Sumna also left a trail of black. Back at the pavilion, Sarcellus waits. "I missed you," he says in a strange tone. "And I you," Esmenet replies. "Where have you been?" "Walking." He snorts, eagerly sniffing at her. "Who?" he asks. "Who what?" "A slap. Not hard, but it seemed to sting all the more for it." "Was it Acamian?" "Yes," she hisses spitefully. At that, her vengeful lover suddenly seems to break down. He embraces her, sobbing. "Forgive me, Esme. I know you love him." But Esmenet does not know what to think, as the thing called Sarcellus, a skin spy only posing as a man, continues to play his curious game with the sorcerer's faithless woman. Elsewhere in the Holy War, near Cyproius, the crown prince of Conria is still conflicted. The Shriya has ordered him to be patient, yet the men of the Tusk are nearing starvation. The emperor, Ikiraisirius III, is still playing his games, supplying just enough food to survive, but not enough to march with. Proius is desperate for some way to outwit the emperor. And now, as if seeking to add more trouble to an already troubled mind, he has agreed to an audience with his former teacher, the mandate schoolman, Drusus Acamian. Acamian finds his former student entirely different from the boy he once knew. Proius has grown into a pious man, and his one-time association with a sorcerer, sinful by nature, invokes shame rather than sentiment. But Acamian simply must try to win him over, as unlikely as success may be. He gives voice to the thought that has been haunting him since Sumna. What if Maithanet, the holy Shriya of the 1,000 temples, is somehow in league with the consult? Could that explain the fact that Acamian's young spy in Rayu fell to his death at the very heart of Sumna's temple complex? Proius is furious, not only at the blasphemous suggestion, but at the fact that Acamian seeks to waste his time with ancient superstition and stories of long-dead enemies. He asks for any shred of evidence, and when Acamian can provide none but the fact that his dreams have been strangely intense of late, Proius rebuffs him mercilessly. I know this pains you, but it must be said. You're a blasphemer, Akamian. Unclean. Your very presence is a trespass against him, an outrage. And as much as I once loved you, I love my God more, far more. I don't want to see you again, ever. Do you understand? Defeated, Akamian heads back to Xenimus's camp. That night, his dreams are as devastating as ever. Once more he dreams that he is Skiotha, the ancient founder of his school. On the fields of Eleniot, he holds a dying king in his arms. Kellhus II, whose prophecy he has heard countless times. I see him so clearly, Skiotha. He's taken the sun as his charger, and he rides among us. I see him, galloping through the hearts of my people, stirring them to wonder and fury. He says such sweet things to give me comfort. He says that one of my seed will return, Skiotha, and Anasurimbor will return. Less than a week later, Akamian is inexplicably summoned once more before Nearsai Proyas. Still wounded by his former student's words, he tries to offer a counter-argument to the young man's harsh piety, to explain that there is the faith of a skeptic who embraces the mystery of God, and then there is the faith of a fanatic who foolishly thinks that he has all the answers, that his course simply must be a righteous one. But Proyas is in no mood to continue the previous week's debate. He wants advice instead. Someone of interest is being delivered, he explains, a Sylvindi that seeks to join the Holy War, and claims to know the ways of the Phantom, a warlord who the men of the Tusk might leverage in their ongoing game with the Emperor. And Akamian understands. In every game of Benjuka, there exists a hidden move that players call Kutma, a decisive fulcrum that can turn everything on its head. Proyas hopes that the Sylvindi might act as a foil against Ikirai Confis, the Emperor's nephew. Soon enough, the newcomers are brought before the prince and the sorcerer. Up until now, Akamian had only seen Sylvindi in his nightmares. In the first apocalypse, the infamous horseman rode for the no-god. He ran his eyes along the scarred length of the barbarian's arms, trying to count his Swazund in a glance. He could not. Very many, he thought, have underestimated this man. Don't trust him, Proyas, Akamian whispers. They're cruel, utterly merciless, as savage as Shrunk and far more cunning. Proyas ignores the warning, saying, Where you see a wraith from your nightmares, schoolman, I see the enemy of my enemy. Cnaiur Skiotha announces himself and claims to have come to sell his wisdom and his sword. He explains to Proyas that after the disaster at the Battle of Skiotha, his tribe is no more. He tells them of the Battle of Zerkirta, where the Sylvindi crushed the Phantom, and Cnaiur himself struck down their general. Not willing to fully ignore Akamian's warnings, Proyas asks the barbarian why a heathen would forsake his lands to join a holy war. The answer to that is offered by the strange blond man in the Sylvindi's company. Wearing little more than rags, he comes forth saying, I am the reason Cnaiur traveled here. I am Anasurimbor Kellhus, son of Moingus, a prince of the north, of Atrathau. We have come to die for the Tusk. Akamian gasped, uncomprehending. Then the name, Anasurimbor, struck him like a sudden blow to the stomach, winded him. The sorcerer harkens back to his dread nightmares, the ancient voice of Kellhus II ringing in his ears. One of my seed will return, Skiotha, and Anasurimbor will return at the end of the world.